Now, in response to that, and as a feature of Games Master Soapbox, I want to take some time and talk a little bit about the elements of an encounter. And so this is perhaps a teaching portion of the show. If you are a player, you might find this part less exciting, if you will. But I think if you're a game master, you'll find going through the elements of an encounter, it'll really help your game session be more useful. So, when I say elements of an encounter, well, first of all, let me clarify that an encounter is not an entire game session, although an encounter might last as long as the full session would be by itself. So, realize that when I'm speaking of an encounter, that encounter can be a micro portion of a game session, or it might be the game session in its entirety. But the elements of an encounter are the following. First of all, there has to be a scene, a place, a location, a temporal framework that defines the encounter. For example, if you are walking along a pier and you notice that one of the boats ahead of you is being loaded, but the people keep looking over their shoulder like they're afraid, there's something in that might be interesting to you, and that's called the hook. And an encounter, therefore, has to have some form of a hook that draws the players to that action. Now, the encounter could be a pre-planned one. In other words, I have an appointment with an underworld thug, or I might be able to get an audience with a noble in a kingdom or whatever. Maybe I'm coming across bandits on a highway. Maybe I'm finding a farmer who's got a problem with his plow. These are all examples of possible hooks for the encounter, things that will set up where these things will happen. So then once you've got your hook, then you also need to have the location, and the location itself could be the hook. If it's, there's a famed gemstone buried in that tomb over there, and we want to go and get that specific item out of that tomb. That is the entirety of the encounter, but the possibility of the engagement is the hook that brought you there in the first place. Beyond the hook in the encounter and the location, you have to have an idea of an adversarial condition. Now, that adversarial condition can be as simple as a lock or a trap or a mechanism, or it can be as detailed as a group of specific people that you need to resolve with. For example, if it is, as I mentioned, the highwaymen and the brigands on the highway, you have to therefore engage with one or more of them in order to resolve the encounter. And that encounter could be a full-on combat scene. It might be a contest between one person's skills and another. In other words, if you're trying to sneak past the guards, then it's a balance, a contest between your ability to avoid identification and their ability to stop infiltrators. So therefore, we have set up a contest. And then finally, it could just be a challenge to skills. In other words, you've gotten into the room and there's a box with a mechanism on it. You need to open the box, get the item out, and get out. That entirety will be checks against skills. So any of those could be the encounter, and the depth of the encounter is really dependent on the flow of the game. And some encounters are as quick as resolve a lock mechanism and get in the door. That could be the encounter. Or it could be, like I said, a full-on group of brigands, and you have to either pacify them, drive them off, or take them prisoner, or succumb and run away yourself. These are all ways that the encounter might go, but the idea is that now you've got an idea of what takes up the beginning and the nemesis of the encounter. Now, the next portion is the conclusion / continuation from that point. And so in many encounters, it's actually step A to get to step B. And now that's not necessarily in the form of a railroad. In other words, you must do A before you do B, or you must do both A and B, or you must only do B, or anything. The idea is that the conclusion of that encounter will be one of the possible results. And since the players choose which of those they wish to engage on, the storyteller kind of has to be open to move the elemental parts around to make it happen. The final portion of the encounter is the satisfaction / resolution of it, and this would include the successful resolution of a combat, the success of getting past the guard, or the adverse, of course, would be the opposite, the failure to do so. But any of those portions that resolve the end of the encounter then lead the story to move on without having to be within that framework. So when you think of the elements of an encounter, you can almost have to think of it in terms of a bubble. The entire bubble is the encounter. The description, the narrative portion of that is to set up the encounter. Then the player's decisions are the resolution of that encounter, and then the outcome of that encounter is the conclusion thereof. And the